Okay, so welcome back. This is the math dealer here, and today I'm going to show you how to complete the square on a generic, meaning any, maybe I shouldn't even have a there, any quadratic equation. So I'm going to take this equation that's simply up here, right? My ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, right? So the first thing I said is when you're solving this equation, remember I'm trying to solve for x. That's really what I'm doing here. I got to make sure a is 1. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but I have no idea what a is. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to divide every term by a. So I am going through my equation and I'm dividing every single term by a. So basically, I came up here and I said, okay, divide by A, divide by A, divide by A, right? That's what I'm doing. Oh, yeah. And 0 divided by A is still 0. Okay. The next step, I'm following my steps. That's all I'm doing, right? Move the constant to the other side. Leave a little space, not a big space. Don't go crazy over the space, you guys, okay? Right? Now my next step, right? Step 3. We're moving right along, right? The orange was step 1. The blue is step 2. The red is step 3. I'm going to take half of my linear term, okay? Well, my linear term, the coefficient of my linear term, I should say, right, is b over a, okay? Well, half of b over a, by the way, is b over 2a. Okay, so this term in here is b over 2a. But remember, I need to square it. I always do this, right? Maybe I should have wrote this all as one step. So I need to take b over 2a and square it. I'm putting this in green, right? I'm going to square it and I'm going to add it to both sides. When I add b over 2a squared, I get b squared over 4a squared. If that's confusing, just stop, pause the video. Basically, I took this value, b over 2a, and squared it. So I squared the numerator, and then I squared the denominator. I squared the 2, and I squared the a. So like I said, if you had to, pause the video, rewind it, do what you have to do. Okay, moving right along, right? Now this is a fun fact, right? You actually can factor this left-hand side, right? That's this whole thing. You have created the perfect square trinomial. So you created it. You can factor it, right? The way you factor it, it's x over b, x plus b over 2a, quantity squared. And like I said, if this is confusing, please, right? If you go back in my previous videos, you'll see what the half of that term is always what goes into that perfect square trinomial. Okay, and we equals. Now, this sometimes might throw some people for a loop. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to rewrite negative c over a, right, with a 4a squared. Okay, so I have one of the a's, so I actually have to multiply the top one by negative 4a. C is still there. Then, of course, I have plus b squared over 4a squared, right? And so when I write this over here, I have b squared minus a 4ac, technically, over 4a squared. Notice all I did was just rewrite the b squared in the front of it. It just makes it a little bit easier. All right. Now, here we go, right? Take the square root of both sides. Don't be rude, of course, but you got to take the square root of both sides. That's what this sixth step says. So when I take the square root of both sides, I get x plus b over 2a. Wait for it, equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And then also, guys, don't forget, I have to take the square root of the denominator over 2a. Isolate your x. X is equal to negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. This, as we said before in those previous videos, remember I can rewrite this all as 1. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. The entire thing, yes, the entire thing over 2a. Does that look familiar? Well, it should. That's our quadratic formula. I know, super, super exciting. All right. And what that means is that I can solve any equation using the quadratic formula. So, remember those previous ones I had up there, okay? The ones I had way at the top, that 3x squared minus x minus 1. Well, check it out. If I was going to have to solve 3x squared minus x minus 1 equals 0, my a is 3. My b is negative 1, and my c is negative 1. Because remember, it takes the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. right? So those are the numbers that are going in. Literally, they are going into this formula. The formula tells me x is equal to negative b. So I take the opposite of negative 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Remember, I always just tell my students just to go ahead and square it as you write it in there, so they don't get confused about the negative being squared. So just take negative 1 and square it. Minus 4 times my a times my c, the entire thing, the entire numerator, over 2a. And like I said, please note, 1 is negative 1 squared. That's where he came from. So I did square my b. Please don't think I didn't square the b, okay? I'm not going to get stung on that. Anyway, so I have 1 plus or minus, and then I have 1 plus 12, which is 13 over 6. And there is your answer, all right? And if you watched my previous video, you're probably like, oh, wait, that's the answer she got then, too. All right, I think I just lost my voice there. Okay, so again, you can plug A, B, and C into this formula, and then you can solve for your x that way as well. All right, so what you've learned here is how to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. All right, I hope this was helpful. This is the Math Dealer signing out.